So these days, whether you're playing with tracks on your church gig, working on material from drum lessons that you're taking, or recording in the studio, drummers have to play with click tracks and metronomes. It's just the way of the world. Well, in today's video, we're going to take a look at some exercises that you can use today to begin tightening up your ability to play with a click track or metronome. Hey there, I'm Brian. Thanks for swinging by my YouTube channel. Thanks for checking this video out. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you like what you're seeing in this video, please hit the thumbs up there, the like, so that this video will get in the feed of a ton of other people and they can get some value out of this content. And while you're at it, smash that bell so that you get notifications every single time I put out a brand new video. Now, what are we talking about today? We're talking about drumming along with click tracks and metronomes. And over the last 30 years, I have worked with literally thousands of students and worked with tons of drummers and bands doing pre-production, getting them ready to go in the studio. And it's surprising how many drummers don't really know if they're locking in with the metronome at all. Some of them are completely oblivious to being able to play with this thing, and YouTube's not very helpful. I've gone through YouTube, and most of the stuff that I find is this real airy-fairy kind of stuff where it's like, just lock in with it like it's another player, or just feel the groove when you're playing. That doesn't give you any feedback or any tangible thing that you can work on to know how well am I locking in with this metronome. Well, today, I'm gonna give you some exercises that you can work on. You'll know right away how well are you playing with the click, and you'll know how to improve it from day one. So a few years ago, I recorded a bunch of content for another educational website, and hours of content on how to play with a click track or a metronome. Now we're going to slice out about 17 or 18 minutes of that, and we're going to look at a couple of exercises that you can do starting today that are going to help you know how well do you play with a metronome, and where do you need to put some work in to really focus your drumming. So let's take a look at that video and get right to the exercises. All right, so let's get to the fun part, working with the click track. There are a lot of different ways to approach this. This is just one that I think works really, really well, has for me and for a lot of my students. I'm going to give you the hardest thing to do. Instead of starting with percussion loops and drum loops and working with tracks and things like that, we're going to play some target practice today. So we're going to use just a basic, bare bones 16th note click track. And I'm going to be playing that on my iPad. And so we're just going to play basic 16th notes along with this. Now, if you've never worked with a metronome or you've never really done some intense target practice with this thing, let me try and approximate what this might sound like for you. This is what it sounds like for a lot of my students that haven't spent a lot of time with it. Kind of a nightmare, right? So what we're really trying to do is we're trying to focus our ability to play a rhythm like 16th notes very intentionally, in this case, very strict to what you might hear called the grid. So part of this is going to be singing that 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a, or maybe even vocalizing it. You may not be perfect. In fact, you're never going to be perfect. But what we're really going for is super consistent. And we're looking to make sure that we stay in the same place on the beat as much as we possibly can on the single surface. And we're going to do that right hand lead and left hand lead. Just get comfortable on a single surface with the 16th notes. Then you're going to go back. After about 3 minutes of that, you're going to go back and look in the computer. You're going to look at your laptop setup. or whatever you're recording with. We're going to judge the distance and maybe see if we can spot some inconsistencies both as we listen and as we look on the screen. See if we can recognize some patterns. Now, we don't want to just play this all at one volume. Let's take it all the way through the dynamic range. You're going to find the bottom end of the dynamic range and the top end are going to be the most difficult, especially if you don't spend a lot of time down here. You might find it hard to keep those notes nice and consistent way down there. It takes a lot of finger control, but it takes some risk too. Don't be deceived. The fingers have a lot to do with that, but the wrist is what really helps to make this thing nice and consistent. So we start with just basic 16th notes. That's at 60 beats a minute. Now, I would record myself with either the Pro Tools rig that you see sitting over here, or our basic DAW setup here with traction and our Behringer audio interface. And then I would go back and I would look at those. So let's take a look at that now to see what those 16th notes look like. Okay, so I'm looking at the performances that you just saw on the snare drum in traction. I've got them pulled up on the screen, and I've also pulled them to the grid in terms of matching the tempo we were playing with the grid that's here in traction. So it's a little easier to see where things fall. We actually have some lines to really help us to see distances. So depending on what resolution I'm zoomed at, overall it looks pretty good. I'm going to pick somewhere right here in the middle. Let's see, right around maybe bar 12. Put my cursor there. And we're going to zoom in and look and see at a much smaller resolution how well I stayed with the click. And so when we get down to this resolution, and I'll just skim through and take a look, it's pretty close all the way around here in bar 10, beat 3. If I really wanted to zoom in and see how close I was, just about, yeah, right on it. Now, what's fun if you're wanting to torture yourself, is we can swap this timeline over to milliseconds. And this is the thing that I tend to look at. If I'm lining up pretty well with the click, but I want to really fine tune it, I'll swap over to milliseconds and I'll take a look and see. All right, well, this particular hit here was, each one of these hash marks that you see at the top now is a millisecond. Our snap resolution is 1 millisecond. So if I really zoom in, man, we're like a nanosecond ahead on this. I'll take that all day long. If I zoom around and look at a few other places, let's look in this spot right here. If I zoom in, this particular note was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6.5 milliseconds off from the actual click. Again, still pretty good. I really am working to see if I can, how well I can get it right on all the time. Remember when I said you're not going to get it perfect? So I'll go in and I'll just kind of zoom around. I'll go, all right, let's look and see. So right here, looks like we're maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 milliseconds. It's not too bad. From the start of the note to where the click is, a little ahead by 5 milliseconds. I'll take that. Overall, if we were to play this back, we would hear it's pretty well locked. Now, here's the interesting thing, and this is why this is such a great exercise. Even as good as this is, I want to notice tendencies. If I look at the very first bar of this, I'll swap back over to bars and beats. If I look at the very first bar of this, it's pretty apparent within the first, these are 16 notes, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Within the first 6 16th notes, what I notice is I started a little behind, and I got a little more behind. And if I look here by this next note, I got a little closer. And then by the 7th strike of the snare drum, I'm on the beat. So it took me about 7 notes to really center the time. These are the kind of tendencies we're talking about. So again, I'm gonna go in here and go, all right, I was a little late the first beat and a half. So how far off was I? Let's see. We zoom in, about 10 milliseconds it looks like. Yeah, so we got, this is a little further than the actual grid line there on the second, but we'll say it's about halfway between these. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and there's our extra half. So I started off 9 milliseconds behind because I was listening to the click. In my ear, I was trying to really center myself and make those first few strikes. Now, 9 milliseconds is not bad when you go and look at this other performance we're going to do. 9 milliseconds, I could tighten that up. The objective here is, can I not need those first 6 notes to finally get myself to where I want to be in terms of me locking with the click? And so that's a natural tendency I would take a look at and go, all right, Brian, we can tighten that up for sure. And I would do some exercises to see if I could, right out of the gate from the very first strike, land right within a 5 millisecond window of the actual iPad click. So that was the good performance. So now let's take a look at the dodgy performance, the one where it didn't really lock steadily with the click. So if you'll go back and listen to that performance, you'll hear that it was really all over the place. So let's zoom in and let's see if we can notice. All right, so it starts off behind, it gets a little more behind, and you'll notice that these notes in between our grid lines here are in wildly different places. This one's almost in the middle. This one's a little closer to the end. That's a little closer to the middle. That shades towards the end. And if I just scroll through these notes, you'll notice that there's not a solid, consistent pattern for where this is sitting. I'm behind, definitely, more behind. Now I'm a little ahead, trying to catch up, still a little behind. Everything's a little behind. You notice the gap here and the gap here are wildly different. And that's going to pull the next note out of place. You see how late the note right after it is. And you can see I actually kind of compensated. I compressed the next note to try and catch up and get back on the beat that you see right there. So let's really see how far off this particular note is. If I zoom in and then I go over to my milliseconds, we're looking here at 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, this is 10 right here. So 10, 20, 30, 41, 2, about 42 milliseconds for that one particular hit. Unless I was trying to play behind the beat and all of them lined up in the same way, that was not intentional, and that's way off. So now if I'm looking, that's 42 milliseconds. I just come a few notes over and zoom into this particular note here, and we notice that now it looks like about less than a millisecond away. So that's a pretty big gap. And especially because we're only, less than a beat away from when those things happened. I'll go back to my other grid here a second. So you can see with this performance, I would definitely go back and look, knowing that this was right hand lead. I would probably look and see this and say, wow, the right hand definitely looks like it's having a problem locking into the time. See how far ahead it was here? It was pretty close to on here where it's 31.3. Ahead on this next one. So these are all the right hands. And now all of a sudden it's back on. So obviously the right hand is having a problem with really locking into the click. And then that's going to pull the left hand around to try and fill in the gap between these very inconsistent notes. So not that I wouldn't look at the left hand at all. Wow, you can see right there how bad that one is. That's really, really bad off. If I had a student that did that, we would definitely see what we could do to correct this problem pretty quickly. So that's the kind of thing that when I look at this and I see some real inconsistencies, there's no real pattern to this. If everything was 5 or 10 milliseconds ahead or 5 or 10 milliseconds behind pretty consistently, then maybe we would talk about how the students hearing the click and how they're hearing themselves against it. But in this case, this is just a really bad performance. And if you were to play in the studio and record with this really sloppy performance, you'd wonder why the band was not locking very well. So this is why this tool is great, because you can go in and really see as well as hear and see if you can notice some natural tendencies so that you can really eyeball what you need to fix. So if I put my cursor here and I zoom back in, you see how much better all that lines up, since the right hand is really hitting right on those grid lines. The left hand's lining up right in the middle. Everything looks really good in that first performance. This I would be okay with. If I were playing a 16th note fill and this is what I saw and what I heard, I would definitely be completely happy with that. So that's how you take this tool and really zoom in to look at what you did and make some real intelligent observations about what's happening and how possibly to fix it. Now, if you look at this and you don't know how to fix it, that's what a great teacher is for. You could bring your computer in, your laptop. You could show this to a teacher and go, man, I really don't understand, why this is happening. And most good teachers, guys that have a lot of studio experience, would be able to look at this and be able to help you with spotting the first, second, and third problems that you may be having to really bring this into focus and get you there a lot quicker than just going around and around the block, not knowing how to fix the problem. So that's traction. That's the sort of way that I would open up this program, look at what I did, make some evaluations, and make some possible decisions about how I'm going to fix whatever problem I have. Now, by looking at these things, you want to notice your tendencies, your patterns. You might want to find how long you go before your attention starts to wane and you really have to focus your attention again. And so much of this is just really that. It's just paying attention. You can spend time with a practice pad. I like to get right on the drum because the response of the drum, the head itself, the tuning, the snare wires, how tight or how loose they are, all those things factor in to the sound that you're going to make as you're playing through this dynamic range. It's not just about hitting a surface. It's not just about hitting a tacky surface. It's about the sound that you're creating. So listen to the sound as well. Make sure you get a nice, consistent, even tone. And then once you spend time on the snare drum, you're also going to move over to, say, the hi-hats. And you're going to play those 16 notes on the hi-hats. You'll notice that I play with the tip of the stick on the hi-hat as well as with the shoulder of the stick on the side. top and the bottom of the dynamic range is going to be the most difficult. Now, I'm not going to play up here, but especially for live playing where maybe the visual is important, so it's good to spend some time getting that thing lined up. But we'll have some accents that are going to be kind of loud. So we want to maybe overdo what we're doing with the accent so that it's actually easier when we bring it back down to a more musical, playable level. So overdo that action a little bit. Same way with the really small stuff. I almost never would play except maybe the grace note of a flam or something like that. I rarely play rhythms and grooves and things at minuscule levels. It's just hard to get the sticks to move and hard to get a good sound. But again, you want extremes, because if you can get it down super, super small, just a few centimeters off of the actual hi-hat or the snare drum, and still keep it pretty clean, then when you get back into a playable small note, which is, more like about that, whatever that is, you're going to find that it's a lot easier to do that if you've gone past the point of your comfort. So there you go. Actionable stuff that you can do today to let you know how well you play with a metronome and where you need to improve. There's a ton more work that you can do, a ton more exercises I can give you. I'm actually in the middle of filming a whole course for my teaching site, drumcorner.net. Now, if you want to get notifications when that course goes live, make sure you hit that bell right below this video. You'll get notifications anytime I post a new video to YouTube, and you'll get a notification when that course goes live as well. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We've got an April 2023 goal to hit 1,000 subscribers for this channel. I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button, and if you dig the video, make sure you hit the like button so that this video will pop up in the feeds of tons of other drummers who could use this material. So that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I really hope these exercises help you. Until next time, be awesome to everybody. Be awesome to yourself. And as always, I'll see you when I see you. Thanks so much. So if you got a lot out of this lesson and you'd like more to practice to help improve your groove, just click to go to that video right there.